The reason why we're here at Experiment Nation is because I don't want my community to have just a hammer on their tool belt, because when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But when you have a hammer and you have, screwdriver, tape measure, you have a lot of different tools on your tool belt that you can utilize based on the opportunity that presents itself. And what I would say the main key takeaway is, my key takeaway from all this is always have furnished accommodations, because it gives you an opportunity to have multiple exit strategies, from having short-term rentals to even long-term rentals where you can charge a little bit more of a premium because you have furnished accommodation, to physicians, to insurance policyholders, to schools, to universities, to, again, I said hospitals, to construction workers, to you name it. There is an opportunity. And instead, thinking of focusing on B2B, which is where we're focusing.
Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Experiment Nation, what's going on? Ruben here, your host, and I want to specifically highlight today a MTR versus STR Smackdown that we had last week. It was had some heavy hitters, and if you didn't tune in, you need to follow me on Instagram, The Real Estate Experiment, and you also need to follow my fellow co-host, Rachel Gainsborough, whose event this was put together. And I had such a pleasure hosting her after having her in my lab with these respectable leaders in our industry that are specifically focusing on midterm rentals. Now, the MTR versus STR Smackdown was to truly highlight that, with an asset, there are multiple ways that an asset can be used. And when you think of a home that's furnished, you already have the opportunity to do short-term rental, also known as Airbnb and VRBO. But then there's also an opportunity that these folks highlighted that exists to us that we should be very aware of. And I talked about this in some of my previous content in the past before, about how you can truly utilize or I should say, a single family, in this case, single family residence, or it could be a building, multifamily. And when one can look at an asset and seeing it as one way for it to generate income and an opportunity, another investor can look into that same asset and create another opportunity out of it. For context, what this means is, if you think about a single family home, you might think traditional long-term rentals is one way to operate it. But then if you furnish it, you can actually turn that into a short-term rental. And it's almost like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or cash flow is in the eye of the beholder, because you can then take that same home, that is the exact same single family home that's making, let's say, $1,000 a month in rent, and you can actually make $90,000 a year. Or let's say, what the math would be on that. Let's do some quick math here. $90,000 divided by 12. You can take $1,000 a month property that's unfurnished and you get that as rent, or you can have $7,500 a month with that same property in gross income. Now, you might be wondering, well, how? Well, it's based on how you were able to take that exact same asset, right, and put it into a different model. And I think it's very important for us to understand this, because once you understand the opportunities that exist in the MTR space, then you can start looking at real estate very differently. One sees a single family home, another sees an asset to relocate a family that's working with an insurance company that's has the budget to pay a premium, because it costs them less to actually have that family at your home than it does at a hotel, because they have a family of 5 and they have 2 dogs and they don't have to pay the kennel, right? Like, these are the kind of things where you want to understand. Or it's the single family home, or let's say multifamily condo, and you live next to a hospital and you're able to house traveling nurses or physicians and technicians, healthcare technicians, the way Jesse Vasquez targets them, or Noble Crawford. You live by a school and you're able to actually create a partnership and a relationship, keyword, with the housing department, that has a lot of international students, or that has a professor that is coming in for 2 semesters that needs a place to stay, and it's more beneficial for him to or her to stay at a hotel, at a excuse me, your furnished accommodation, than it is for them to stay at a hotel, because they need a kitchen, they need, again, everything comes turnkey. There's a price to pay for that, and you are the beneficiary of the price that they're willing to pay, because typically it's not the person paying for that, it's the company. So there's relocation professionals, there's tons of opportunities in this space, and what you need to start thinking about is what opportunities exist under my roof, right? You might think, oh, I need 100 units. No, you actually might need just 2 units, repurposed in a way that allows you to make just as much as, yes, you heard it me loud and clear, as much as maybe 100 units would make you. Some of the math on this, guys, does not make any sense. Well, it does make sense, but it would blow other investors away who looked at one vehicle and see it as one. And the reason why we're here at Experiment Nation is because I don't want my community to have just a hammer on their tool belt, because when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. But when you have a hammer and you have, screwdriver, tape measure, you have a lot of different tools on your tool belt that you can utilize based on the opportunity that presents itself. And what I would say the main key takeaway is, my key takeaway from all this is, always have furnished accommodations, because it gives you an opportunity to have multiple exit strategies, from having short-term rentals to even long-term rentals, where you can charge a little bit more of a premium because you have furnished accommodation, to physicians, to insurance policy holders, to schools, to universities, to, again, I said hospitals, to construction workers, to you name it. There is an opportunity, and instead thinking of focusing on B2B, which is where we're focusing. So shout out to, there's a few individuals I want to give a shout out to and highlight as well. And before I do, I want to take the time for a second to talk about who I had the lovely chance of being on the panel with. And for those of you who have been listening to the podcast, as I'm pulling up Noble Crawford here, Noble was one of our guest speakers, and I'm just going to do some quick highlights, but I also want to give you guys an opportunity to tap into the episode here at Experiment Nation. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a cheat sheet if you didn't get a chance to go to the event, because all these resources we had, the only person we did not interview so far is, we will have Amanda Williams. She's also the co-author of Hospitable Host. A lot of gems on there. If you haven't gotten my Airbnb Millionaire Blueprint, there'll be a lot of insights from there as well. And then good old Danny. Dan Rustine specializes in traveling. Like, when you think of someone who's kind of seen all sides of experiments and all angles in the Airbnb short-term rental space, it's him, because he stayed at over 2,000 plus Airbnbs, because he's a digital nomad, you could call him. And he's also used to work at Airbnb, and he's also an Airbnb superhost. So he understands all angles, from a traveler's perspective, from a employee who used to work there, and from being an actual host himself. So we're actually going to work to making sure that we have Dan Rustine in the lab. But just to highlight a few things, so Amanda Williams talked about her ability to double dip the exact same way that I do in real estate, and being able to get like 5 times the commission, or at least 5 different ways to get paid as a realtor. So to all my realtors out there, you want to tap into Amanda Williams, make sure you check her out. And you can find her on Instagram. Just type in Amanda Williams, their traveling realtor. And what she does is, she's not only able to get referral business for individuals when needed, but she can also help them buy. And for those who are relocating, and when they're relocating, they're staying at her properties. And then she's able to help them buy. She's representing, she gets the commission. If she's referring the business out, she gets the referral. And essentially with EXP, if you're an EXP agent like myself, you also get stock options through every transaction. You still get paid out. And so she has at least 5 different ways that she makes money on the referral business, on the actual commission, the actual management, on the actual acquisition. So it's a pretty neat concept. You want to definitely tap in if you're a realtor. Another thing we don't talk about enough is realtor hacking. Is when if you represent yourself on a deal, you get that commission as well. I know on this last deal, I got paid in multiple ways: closing cost contribution, which was negotiated by me as a realtor, getting paid commission, getting equity into more stock options at EXP Realty. I mean, just in so many ways, and then even getting uh, uh, referrals like through ADT, like $300 a year for referring yourself to getting a quote on a new house. Like it just never ends. So hack experimentation, hack away, and make sure you tap into these hacks. All right. Jesse Vasquez, we've had him. I'm part of his mastermind. We've had him in episode 208. And if you haven't tapped into them, you really want to look into another practitioner who has 17 years plus of experience in the healthcare sector and was able to tap into a need when he worked there in the business development department and in the hospital. He identified that a lot of traveling nurses who are, definitely not from the area were staying at a Motel 6. So then he saw the opportunity to create housing for them because that's not something that the hospital had a relationship with or even knew of. And he was able to just kickstart his business. Now he owns, he co-hosts, he recently did $1 million with just 9 properties in midterm rentals. And so we're talking from traveling nurses to relocating professionals to insurance companies as well, where he's making anywhere from the likes of getting $12,000 a month on a insurance policy holder who is getting that additional living expenses paid through his insurance company. So you can scale really quickly, or I should say, make a lot of cash because it's not about the numbers, it's about the cash flow that you make on these midterm rental deals, and the margins are just significant. It would honestly take some people 30 units to get this kind of net cash flow in net, right? And I can speak to that because we've gotten anywhere from the likes of $55,000 in the span of 7 or 6 months. So this stuff really does work. So if you haven't tuned in, make sure you tune in at episode 208. It is one that you definitely want to tap into. And he even goes through, I'll give you guys another gem that he talked about too, is, go to Indeed. .com and look at traveling nurses in your city, and then when you see all of the job applications or posts, those are companies or agencies posting those jobs that you can reach out to and be like, hey, see, you're hiring for these nurses, but you have housing for them. We're a company that works for B2B, and we're looking to do XYZ to host your traveling nurses in the future, or at least start the conversation there. And then another gem that he talked about that's really important is like when you do get a name or you do get your first guest that's staying there, use that to name drop to open up more doors and be like, hey, such and such is staying at our property. So we wanted to reach out to see if we could help other people like you, like her or him, or whoever the person might be. Or I spoke with such and such. When you get a name, you ask, hey, who's the person that's in charge of your housing? And one person from that company tells you, you then take that other person's name, say, hey, I was speaking with Leslie, and she told me that you're the go-to person for this and that. It opens up that relationship and rapport building already. Then we also had Ziana, who is the co-author of 30 Day Stay. She came in and dropped some bombs. We had Ziana speak or come into our lab on episode 215. And she's been doing this for a while. So, tapping into someone with her experience, and being able um to truly understand the power that midterm rental can have, learning from someone with Ziana is key. She's been in the industry from the very, very beginning. Like very early, she was doing co-hosting from long distance, etc. And now she's trying to reel it in and do a little bit less, but she was co-hosting outside of the country. That's how dialed in you can be with your systems and your checklist. And recently she even shared a checklist with me on her furnishing checklist. It's very detailed and detail oriented. So these are the kind of level of details and systems that you want to have to be able to do that. You can tap into episode 250 for Ziana. You don't want to miss it. It's a great episode. And she even gave us a hack. We talk about Furnished Finder a lot. And a lot of people see, again, how you see one tool on your tool belt is how you see, if you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, when you're used to Airbnb, you think every OTA, online travel agency, operates like Airbnb. So a lot of people make the mistake of seeing Furnished Finder as an Airbnb, when rather it's a lead generation tool. You can go to the tenants tab, the match tenants tab, and see the other people that are matching with your property, alongside your property. These are so the way it works is tenants will try to inquire about your property on Furnish Finder, but sometimes it'll just have, based on the description of what they're looking for, your property will be a match to them. And your job, because it gives their number and their email, is to reach back out and be like, hey, I see you're looking for such and such, is this a good fit? So that's how you want to use the tenant leads, is key, because it gives all their information, what they're looking for, without, it's kind of a two-way door, rather than Airbnb being a one-way door where the guest has to reach out and you have no access to the guest. So that's very key for you to understand how that works. Tap into episode 215 for that on the Real Estate Experiment podcast. You do not want to miss that episode as well. Experiment Nation, I have a special gift for you. If you're in the Airbnb space, or if you're thinking of getting into the Airbnb space, you're an operator with multiple units, your first unit, your 100th unit, just about to get into Airbnb, you are going to want to get this blueprint that I put together for you. Now, I want to give context of how this was put together, because sometimes people assemble these ideas and top 10 lists, top 5, top this, and it doesn't have any true valued, vetted content. What I've done is I've surrounded myself by the best top short-term rental Airbnb operators in the world. I co-authored a best-selling book with them called Hospitable Host. I've had them on my platform and interviewed them to get the questions that you guys want to learn the most from into the episode, the show, The Real Estate Experiment, as you know. And I've also paid tens and thousands of dollars to be sitting in the room to get these notable insights that we implement ourselves as short-term rental operators. I'm a short-term rental specialist. I'm licensed to do it in the respective markets. We build ours in Georgia. We have a management company ourselves. We're Airbnb Superhost. So we not only talk the talk, but we walk the walk, but we still consistently surround ourselves with the best in the space to get us further ahead. And this is what we've put together, an Airbnb Millionaire Blueprint, where you don't just hear it from me, you hear it, and it's an aggregate list. It's 21 pillars from short-term rental operators worldwide who've implemented this, and it's worked. And these are the exact same way we've been able to get results and get the same results from implementing these insights that I've pulled from multiple faces, right? Some people have tons of arbitrage units like TJ Tijani. Some like Bill Faith have just a few. Some like Michael Shogun has boutique hotels. They've scaled, and whether you have 1 unit, 10 units, or 100th unit, or about to get into your first unit, you're going to want to have this blueprint that you can utilize universally wherever you are in the world. Want to get this. I put together, we took a lot of time to put this together this year after all that we've been implementing in our lab, for you to have a guide that you can leverage, right? That you can use and implement. We've also given and tagged everybody that we've featured in, and giving them credit, so you know where the source is coming from. And you can check out their Instagram. You can see that they're vetted individuals that we not only work with and trust, but learn from, because sometimes you get a lot of different information, and I want to make sure I give that credit where you can find out that person. And we've also, if they've been on our show, we've also linked the episode within this free blueprint. It's the Airbnb Millionaire Blueprint. Want to make sure you go to experimentrealestate.com. Once you get there, you'll see the pop-up that says I have something for you. Just scroll down, enter your name, enter your email, and we'll get it right sent to you. Don't want to sleep on this. We've been putting this together for quite some time, and I know that it will serve you regardless of where you are in your journey, to have an Airbnb Millionaire Blueprint that has been collectively vetted and has been sourced from operators who are operating at a high scale. Experiment Nation, you are welcome. Make sure to go to experimentrealestate.com and get your Airbnb Millionaire Blueprint, so that you can also scale to the level of experiment that these practitioners like ourselves have done just for you, Experiment Nation. We'll see you on the other side. Then Noble Crawford. I mean, it was just a master class on his own. We had Noble on episode 206 here in the lab. And of course, I mean, Noble is is the one most unconventional B2B uh uh leader that we had on that panel, because it's just not something that we think of. We don't think of doing government contracts. We don't think of going to your local university and having that relationship build with the leasing department to think of you first, and or directly have them reach out to you when they have staff or faculty that they're looking to place in midterm rentals. I mean, these are the relationships you want to start building, and he's doing it. These, midterm rental contracts, these government contracts, you know, they're done in bulk and at scale. He's also using a rental arbitrage strategy to do that. So properties that he doesn't own, he's also able to run that play and be able to provide furnished accommodations to these individuals, these entities, and sometimes individuals who are looking to have, again, furnished accommodation, as he calls it. So again, there's a lot of advantages that focusing on agencies, focusing on construction companies, any company, you name it, there's a need for it, and he's in the business of fostering those relationships with those companies, and so there's I mean, there's just so many gems that, just thinking of it, you definitely want to tap into episode 206, if you haven't already, because he goes into these basically, it's a process, and anytime there's a process, there's a what I like to call a, high barrier of entry, because some things, like whether it's the government contracts, etc., there's certain loopholes that you have to jump through, which means there's no competition, and that's where you want to be, where it's kind of difficult to get into, but once you're in, you reap all the rewards. So lots there to unpack. We also had Sari D. Weaver, who is also the co-author of 30 Day Stay. What I love about Sarah is how she pretty much house hacked her way through everything, and then pivoted to midterm rentals, from buying like 4 units to another 4 units, to leveraging other people's money, to just really doubling down. One of the things we talked about in episode 219 was her ability to use first time home buyer programs to leverage that. I think it was called like a home vanity program. I forget what the program is, but it is on my Instagram, and it is in the episode in itself. But her whole thing is, she would mortgage hack, essentially. I mean, it's completely legal to buy a home for 6 months and move out of it if those are the terms that you have, and use owner occupants occupied lending to do that, and then house hack the other rooms, let that pay for your lifestyle, to then move around and then continue to rinse and repeat, move out, continue to do it, rent it out. And so she was able to really mortgage hack, as I call it, and room hack, house hack, to then scale very quickly, and understanding her numbers, and just being very, very key. And she's in a different market, right? And she's invested in different markets where, um you know you, being able to double the income from travel nurses compared to LTRs, and having some more than enough decent margins to be able to cover her overhead and lifestyle. So another thing to think about too is, what market are you in? Because the buying point might be very different. You might be able to get a quad for 300K, right? Or 400K, right? And so you need to be very, very keen on, what your end goal is, and what pool you want to play in, and then, where can you house hack? So tune in to that episode. I'm giving you guys kind of like an index here. Sarah D. Weaver, episode 219 on the Real Estate Experiment podcast. We go into more detail on that. And it's very, one of her snippets on one of her best performing social media views, based on the concepts that she talks about. You don't want to miss a thing. Last but not least, obviously, we had my co-host Rachel Gaines Russo that I'm so thankful of. Rachel was on guest episode 181, and she truly opened up the door for this insurance policy holder midterm rental, which has been, to me, I think that one is the game changer, because that's the kind of money that when you are able to secure that, not only are you helping a family who's in a distressed situation like a flood or renovation. Right now we have two families that one's renovating, the other is also, their home is being renovated because a tree fell in their home. I mean, there's so many things, nuances that occur that need to be um that that one of the biggest key takeaways from her is you want to make sure your home is pet friendly, because that's just simply a gap in the marketplace, right? Like there's a real gap for that. Like, make your home pet friendly, like, period. And it will benefit you, because um these we need these families who need relocation don't have that luxury to pay for, or at least have a place that will accept pets, especially if there are many and they're looking for a home. And if your home doesn't include pets, then you've already wiped out half of the pool right there of opportunity. I would say even more. I think her percentage was 80% of hosts don't allow pets, which means the 20% have a huge opportunity. And then how many of those 20% are actually able to provide long-term stays, midterm rental, long-term stays, right? So huge advantage there. And her case studies are nuts, right? I mean, we talk anywhere from like, I had it up here open right before I got on the air, but we're talking about case studies of, uh, what is this? Two, two, two adults, two bedrooms, $98,000. It's 5 bedrooms, 4 baths for 11 months, $98,000 in total. Another one here, 6 bedroom home, $82,000. Another one here, a home worth 280,000, 2 bed, 2 bath. They're getting total revenue of 31,000 for 2 months, for 6 months. So, I mean, it's a game changer, right? I mean, this insurance space is, if you're able to foster a relationship the exact same way Jesse talks about, that's the exact same way we do it, right? We follow up, hey, we have such and such at your current home at this time. How can we help? Can we help anybody else? Is there anybody else that you can, refer, on your team that might need help in this part of the town, right? One of the things Jesse talks about is really cultivating and focusing on one market too, because then you can be the go-to for that. They know that, hey, you're going to have inventory for, these different zip codes. That's key. And that's exactly what we're doing. And we're taking it a step further. We're trying to create a network, because once all your properties are filled, there's an opportunity to help the other people and other hosts. All right. Other hosts that have furnished accommodations, who don't even know these opportunities exist. You can actually introduce these opportunities to other hosts as well, which is what we're doing. So if that's something that you're interested in being, make sure you join our network by you can DM me on Instagram. I also have the link there in my bio. It'll also be included in this bio. You can just join our network. If you're listening out there and you don't know how to do this, or you don't really have the time, join our network. And we'll find a deal for you. It's something that we're rolling out actively. It's a beta at this time, but it's something that we've already done. Our investors are happy with it. We've brokered them deals from insurance companies, and there's a way that you can do the same. So, or at least benefit from it. So, with that said, just wanted to wrap this episode by saying that look at don't look at it as an asset with just one lens, right? Look at your toolbox. Furnish your properties, because you already can pay a premium there, or people will pay a premium for it. And then you give yourself options. Do I want to cater travel nurses? Am I close to a hospital? Can I do long-term stays? They're literally this past month, we had a guest seek out. We have a 42-night stay. They're probably going to extend. House is doing renovations. Sometimes they'll let the client look on Airbnb themselves. And what they'll do, they'll filter, right? They're going to filter the search to have 30-day minimum, because no one wants to play around with a spotty calendar. So it's all about calendar management. So are you giving yourself the opportunity to give your asset multiple different exit strategies? And so that's it. That's it for today. I want to let you guys know that, again, if you're out there, you're listening, and this is kind of like ringing a bell, the light bulb's going up. Rachel and I are going to be posting a lot more of these in the future. So you definitely want to make sure you tap in. Follow us on Instagram. Follow me at The Real Estate Experiment and her Short-Term Gems, because we're going to be hosting these, and we're going to be really educating our community on this and taking advantage of the opportunity here. I think there's a real shift in the short-term rental space, and the midterm rental spaces, it can be ran as a hybrid as well. So don't think that you got to make this huge jump in transition. You just got to start positioning your calendars, right? And one thing that I do, I duplicate my listings. That's a little hack that I'll give you. I duplicate my listing, have one that's short-term rental and one that's midterm rental, and then I remove the instant book. That way, if someone inquires, then I can kind of manage. And trust me, if someone comes in for 6 months and with the other duplicate listing and they're saying it's going to be 7,000, 8,000, you find a way to make it work, right? That's just your duty as a business owner to make that work. It's called opportunity cost. You want to make sure you find a way to manage your calendar to make that work, or manage other bookings, move them around if you need to, move them to another property, refer it to somebody else. Give them a heads up notice if you do need to, have them cancel, not you as a host, but, be a steward of your calendar and in your business at the end of the day, right? To get the maximum return on your investment, and then give the maximum experience to your guest that's coming in through the doors. That's another thing that we'll talk about in another episode, is what you need to actually offer to make sure it's actually a hospitable stay. So with that said, guys, thank you so much. Make sure you tune into these episodes. Ziana, episode 215, Sarah D. Weaver, episode 219, Jesse Vasquez, episode 208, Rachel Gainsborough, episode 181, and Noble Crawford, episode 206. Emmanuel Williams and Danny, if you guys tag him, if you hear this and you want to see him on this podcast, tag me on Instagram and tag them and say you need to be on the Real Estate Experiment podcast, because we'll do our job to get them there. But they're on the panel, so we'll reach out to them, make sure that we schedule that, make sure that happens. And with that said, continue to conquer your day. And just like that, we are out.
Experiment Nation, podcasting has changed the way we operate as real estate investors ourselves, and it can do the same for you. Podcasting has been the source of the masterclasses that we get thanks to the world-class real estate investors and practitioners and specialists that come into the lab from all realms, from short-term rentals to midterm rentals to real estate syndications to even software as a service. Owners, founders, entrepreneurs have helped enrich our experiments by giving us the education, helping us build a network, and lastly, and most importantly, a brand association to open up multiple doors for our respective businesses. If you understand the power that podcasting can have, and you know that you need one for your brand, please, you can rely on our team. InvestedTalent.com is my team and the team that helps this podcast, the Real Estate Experiment, become the fruition each and every single week to educate my community, build relationships on the air, and continue to build our brand. If you know that you need to do the same for your brand and you haven't pulled the trigger yet, maybe because you don't know how, our company, InvestedTalent.com, does the end-to-end from the time that you record, from the time that it is published, to even repurposing content on multiple social media platforms. That's what my team can do for you. Simply go to InvestedTalent.com and book a discovery call to see how my team can help you launch your podcast.